his choosing of mercy in Gollum, it nearly brought forth a self-consequential fate of death in the failure of the quest. Gollum lives, follows the hobbits, and he seizes the ring from Frodo, right? And you think, oh, if only Frodo had just killed him right then and there, then they would have been free of that burden. Gollum would have been finally gone and taken care of. But instead, Frodo chooses to show mercy.
Hello everyone, my name is Connor William, and welcome to Amalion. You may or may not have seen my previous video called J.R.R. Tolkien, A Brief Biography. This is obviously a new channel. I suppose that this video would be considered my first official analysis video. I was recently pondering about The Lord of the Rings and the significance of the One Ring, its relation to our lives and sin, and particularly how Samwise Gamgee is a perfect agent in representing the consequence of devotion, the good consequences of devotion. So I decided to make a video today, which shall be called, I suppose, I've decided to call it The One Ring, Sin and Mercy, which I hope might shed some light upon the One Ring and how it is an application of that which we each struggle with in our daily lives every single day. As we know, Tolkien was a devout Roman Catholic, and his religious views left an impressionable mark upon his fiction, of course. So the moral structure of The Lord of the Rings bears a strong influence from the New Testament. So a quest is an agent of focus. So, because quests, they keep one's eyes fixed upon a certain goal. Goals create a sense of purpose, which, when accomplished, bring about the gratification of fulfillment in our lives. Reading about someone else pursuing a quest, especially when we ourselves, we the readers, feel like the protagonists themselves, it provides us with a sort of guide, showing us how we might go about pursuing our own quests in this world, in our world, the primary world. Fairy tales teach us courage in face of improbable odds, how to remain level-headed, wise, just, and true as we fare along our own paths. Our lives are one grand journey which we all make, and which we all must take in order to win a particular reward. Tolkien believed that we each inherently desire paradise. And this is very true. In The Lord of the Rings, the quest is to lose a treasure, not to gain one. However, it is in fact the winning of a treasure at the same time, and that treasure being the utmost valuable treasure of all. The One Ring is an application of sin. So I mentioned that. I mentioned that earlier. So what do I mean by that? That it's an application of sin. Sin which hinders all of man. We cannot escape it. We can't escape it. The ring is also an application of pride and power. Okay, sorry about that. You probably noticed that I'm wearing different clothes than I was before. I ran into some technical difficulties since the last time I recorded. It's been a few days, actually. And between the time that I last recorded and now, I caught a bit of a cold. So please excuse my voice if you noticed that. Okay, so what I was saying before... Yeah, so the One Ring is an application of sin, which hinders all of man. We can't escape it, as I said before. But the ring is also an application of pride, power, and lust. A lust which lands us, you could say, lands us painfully fallen upon the sharp, jagged crags and fiery floors of the kingdom of the Dark Lord, you could say. The One Ring has often been described as its circular shape is it suggests
the will, so the will of man, our will, the will closed in upon itself, and its empty center of that ring, of that circle, is like a void of nothingness. It's a void that is devoid of fulfillment, and into which we willingly jump when we concede to use our own one ring, or to sin. Frodo's quest is to destroy the ring, and his quest to destroy it is therefore an application as well in itself, of course. The resistance, denial, and ridding of our sinful tendencies. Such a goal, when achieved, wins us the ascended spiritual state that may allow, God willing, the acquirement of paradise. So the ultimate reward, which is the ultimate reward of existence, which fans the flame of ambition in all people. Really, it does, and because there's nothing more fulfilling than eternal life. Of course, it's the greatest form of inspiration. So the quest of the One Ring is an ultimate goal of acquiring the highest potential form of growth, not merely a physical, but of a spiritual measure. The destruction of the One Ring, it is indeed a reward for the hobbits, because its destruction means the sustaining and enduring welfare of the Shire, of course, the lovely Shire. So the physical description of the Shire's decline, contrived by the enemy, that it is clearly an application of our primary world's problem of industrial revolution, which Tolkien himself detested. He loathed it. So the obvious clues are found in the description of smokestacks and pollution and deforestation, that sort of thing. I often find that insightful. It's an interesting parallel to make, although it's important that we don't perceive it as a direct allegory of the primary world, or of the modern world, and its modern scientific revolutionary approach to society. However, Tolkien's experience in the world, especially fighting in the World War I, left practical effects upon him, and obviously influenced his writings to some extent. You can't deny that. I mean, our experiences in life will affect how we perceive things, and how we, if we're a writer, what we will write about. So you can't get around that. But it's important that we remember that the Lord of the Rings and all of Tolkien's entire mythological legendarium, it's important that we do not look at it as a direct allegory, because first and foremost, it is a fairy tale, and Tolkien believed, and he wrote it in such a way that it's a story that you go to escape from the primary world. It's supposed to be a form of recovery and healing and restoration of the self, of the soul. So you go there to escape your troubles and these worldly burdens that we carry each day. Anyway, it's important that we remember that, I think. Tolkien once wrote in a letter that the plot of The Lord of the Rings is concerned with the ennoblement of the humble. Perhaps more clearly is this visible in the character of Samwise Gamgee. He is perhaps the most humble of all the hobbits. He's a willing and loyal servant, devoid of any personal agenda, whose only ambition is to own a garden of great measure. That's the only ambition he has, is to own his own garden. Of course, Sam survives. He survives the quest. Arguably, Frodo does not survive the quest, because he carries his wound forever until he must willingly choose death himself by taking the last ship to the Undying Lands. But what we see throughout the quest is Sam shifting from an immature to a mature state of innocence. An immature to a mature state of innocence. His innocent characteristic remains all the way through. In fact, one thinks of the biblical line, one cannot enter the kingdom of heaven except as a child, which is relevant because, I mean, of course, Tolkien, as I've said already, he was a very devout Roman Catholic. So it's not an arbitrary thing to imagine that perhaps some of these biblical pieces of wisdom found their way into his writings. It's actually very likely. It's almost undeniable. So, but anyway, it's comforting to find out that Sam, in the end, is like Frodo. He is granted admittance into Valinor as well. And so that event, his being granted admittance into Valinor, that reflects the biblical idea: the first will be last, and the last will be first. So you have this hobbit who is the most humble and who is the most obedient. Who in today's age, a lot of those kinds of people are seen as the most, I don't know, we could say lowly, for lack of a better word, or the less privileged. Sam's not, he's not rich. He's very simple-minded. He appreciates the simple things in life. And so, I think it harks to that biblical wisdom that is, the first will be last and the last will be first. Sam receives the chief reward. I mean, at the end of the story, I mean, we all know, we've all read the story. Sam achieves a married life spent in the peaceful Shire. He's surrounded by his children, and in the end, he has a family. He has a beautiful wife. He has all his children, and in the end, a life eternal. He receives eternal life in Valinor at the end. I mean, what could be better than that, right? The countless sacrifices he offered, both willingly and selflessly, without hesitation, are clearly rewarded, which substantiates the assurance that through obedience and contrition, fused with the uniting of the self with God, results in the reward of paradise. And clearly glimpses of Tolkien's Christian ideologies are present here, throughout the story, and that's just one example. Again, it reveals itself in Sam's willingness to sacrifice his beloved Shire. In the Mirror of Galadriel, Sam gleams into the mirror, and he perceives the Shire burning. Yet he willingly chooses to go on, to remain beside his master, rather than turn back to save his home, which he feels profoundly tempted to do. This is a great sacrifice. It must not go underappreciated. This moment is very, very significant. In that moment, Sam, he commits a significantly great sacrifice. I mean, everything, his whole life, he sees is burning, and so everything, it takes everything within him to ignore those passions, those desires, to turn back and abandon his duty. And he doesn't. He continues, he sticks to his master, and he obediently and loyally, faithfully carries on. He grasps on to faith, born out of his love and loyalty to Frodo. But as mentioned before, his holding on to what seems undeniably like both a helpless cause and complete uncertainty. It earns him in the end the reward of love and eternity. In a sense, once we, the reader, have reached the end of the story, sitting there by the fire with Sam and his family, reflecting upon the loss and memory of of the long, long journey we've witnessed through Sam's eyes, we ourselves experience a sort of transformation. Certainly Sam has undergone a very real transformation, but it feels like we shared the journey with Sam. And therefore, we feel as though we know what it is that he endured. Then one asks the question, well, what do we do now? What do we do with this? We've gone through that long, enduring quest and full of torment and some of the most difficult and turbulent trials that we could ever possibly imagine. And we think, well, what do we do now that we've survived and we're back home again? What now? At the end of all that, one feels ready to embrace the inexorable change of the future bravely, with courage. Because when we have surrendered ourselves, as Sam has done, then we're strong enough to endure any hardship. Right? So, but Sam doesn't have to do this necessarily. It's a new age. So the ring's been destroyed. It's a new age. He saved his beloved Shire. He gets to enjoy it now. He's wiser, yet he retains that matured innocence, which was his protective shield along his dark journey, protecting him from the temptations of the ring, which is to either give up and leave, or claim the ring for himself. These passions that constantly arise in Sam are like the passions that constantly arise in mankind every single day. And to kill off the self, to kill those passions, to deny them, is to conquer, in a sense, to conquer death itself. Because if you giving up those things, we can see that one's life on earth is much more enriched, and we are at peace in the mind. Our souls are alive. When we do those things, when we deny those passions. And so Sam has experienced that, and he understands it very well. Those passions of either giving up, or claiming the one ring for himself, his matured innocence sort of was like his shield, and helps him with denying those temptations. The one ring it's a representation of what man must renounce. So that is the quest of mankind. That is mankind's quest. We must renounce the ring, which is the sin we are all subject to because of the fall of man. Just like Christ who sacrificed himself for us, so too must we make sacrifices in our own lives in order to unlock our full potential to live, to become like God himself, to be saints, because in doing so is to pursue the unification with Christ, who conquered death on the cross, right? One fully lives when they have overcome death, and which can be achieved when dying every day through the surrendering and the resistance of temptation, or the vices. But sin itself cannot be wholly renounced. Completely. We can't completely renounce sin. We will always be afflicted we will always have that cross to bear. The only way is to surrender ourselves to the aid of something outside, right? Beyond the individualistic self. We are not strong enough. We're not. So we must depend upon Christ. We must ask him for aid and prove our devotion by surrendering ourselves, forgiving our neighbors, and showing mercy. This very idea is shown in the events that occur in Mount Doom. At the very end of the quest, Frodo fails. He fails the quest. He does. He claims the ring for himself and decides to covet it instead of destroy it. The reader realizes here that the thing which saves Frodo was his act of mercy. He forgives Gollum for his trespasses and lets him live beforehand, before the Mount Doom scene. He forgives Gollum. He does. He forgives him. He shows mercy. He lets him live. It can be argued that the success of the ring's ultimate demise was not solely achieved by the acts of Frodo nor Sam, nor even Gollum, but by rather a higher power or force who operates through our free will. Yet at the same time, it can be argued that the success of the quest is achieved by all four at the same time. So there's kind of like a duality there. So Frodo, Sam, Gollum, and the higher power all together, because they all act cooperatively in causing the final doom of the ring, because we have free will to choose. This power has granted, like God has given to us, free will to the peoples of Arda, allowing them the choice to show mercy, forgiveness, love, and compassion. This power seems, therefore, to forgive us for our trespasses when we choose to forgive those who have trespassed against us. Frodo has trespassed in the highest degree of his quest, right? Yet Frodo lives. Frodo lives. This seems, therefore, a kind of divine providential reward for his choosing of mercy toward Gollum. Because he chose to show Gollum mercy, it seems like he was rewarded by this divine providential power. This kind of analysis is only supported even further when we read a letter written by Tolkien himself, in which he says that the Lord's Prayer was his chief influence in writing about the events of Mount Doom. The final scene of the quest was so shaped simply because, having regard to the situation and to the characters of Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, those events seemed to me mechanically, morally, and psychologically credible. I should say that within the mode of the story, the catastrophe exemplifies an aspect of the familiar words, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." So as you can see, a final doom is thus deemed in the Fiery Mountain, a doom which was determined by the free acts of Frodo and Providence responding to those acts. Mercy and compassion are reaffirmed in this instant. So the conclusion of the quest is a triumph of Providence over fate, right? So the seemingly foolish decision Frodo made in granting Gollum his life, it bore an inverted result. It's his choice, his choosing of mercy in Gollum, it nearly brought forth the self-consequential fate, a self-consequential fate of death and the failure of the quest. Gollum lives, follows the hobbits, and he seizes the ring from Frodo, right? And you think, oh, if only Frodo had just killed him right then and there, then they would have been free of that burden. Gollum would have been finally gone and taken care of. But instead, Frodo chooses to show mercy. All he has to do is finish them off, steal away into the shadows, and reunited with his precious. That's where Providence triumphs over fate, as a result of the mercy Frodo showed. Instead, Gollum, along with the ring, slips by chance into the cracks of doom, and both fall to their demise. And this moment seems ordained by an outer source, granted as a reward for the acts of Frodo's virtue. I hope this video has allowed you to see how Tolkien, through the One Ring, succeeded in creating an application of sin, devotion, and mercy, and the importance of resisting temptation in our own lives. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis video, then please feel encouraged to subscribe. Your support will be very much appreciated. Thank you.